Hello friends, welcome to episode 145 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I'm Sarah.
I'm Rob.
How are we doing, Rob?
Oh, it's been a week.
Buddy, I am tired. It has
know.
been such a long week, and it is Wednesday,
It's
man.
Wednesday. If we don't do these check-ins, I swear, life would just drift.
Yeah.
So this is good. Thank you for being here, everybody, with us as well. We appreciate it. And for you who are not here live with us, we appreciate you listening to our tired rants.
Oh, man.
So.
Yeah, you are getting both of us at best 60% energy tonight, man.
But we're here, and we're doing our therapy session, and it's the second Wednesday of the month.
And that means System Spotlight.
Correct. And actually, we kind of had a surprise on this one come out of left field, because Stars Without Numbers is our topic. And when we were doing a little bit of research on this, I ran across a Reddit article. Can I call it an article?
It was a Reddit thread.
It's a thread.
Post.
And I'm going to butcher it. Zarish?
Zaurish, yeah.
Yeah, Zaurish9 had posted it, and I thought it was a really great summary of how they enjoyed Stars Without Numbers. And reading back through some of their stuff, they had a lot of really great discussion about the system and how they got into it and what they had done for running it at this convention. And so, on a whim, we reached out and actually got to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't able to get them on the show for tonight live because they're out of the country.
Yeah.
For those in the Discord, they're seeing some photos that...
halfway around the world right now.
Correct.
So they're on a much different time schedule, but they were able to talk to us a little earlier today, and Rob recorded some interview with them and stuff like that. So we luckily have that to share with you.
Yeah, we're going to be kind of sprinkling it in here and there to include Charles, is his name, his comments as we go, but to give you guys a little feel, and hopefully this works as well.
I'm going to let him actually played the game.
Let him kind of address, what I asked him what systems he's done and things like that.
So I've been doing tabletop RPGs for about 6 years. I moved to a new town in 2013, and I think growing up in this age, I always played video games. A lot of people play video games, but I just started to get bored of how there's always those invisible walls, and if you do those MMO video games, it can feel kind of exploitative, like they want to take all your time and money and stuff. So we had this game cafe in our town, and the only thing I knew about people who play role-playing games that they're supposed to be super obese and antisocial and everything, and I was a little scared, but then at some point I just thought, I want to try something new. It sounds cool, and I tried it. I played one D&D game, and then I right away I knew I wanted to be the game master, because I love the idea of creating worlds and stories. So I started doing public games for about 2 years. And in the course of that, I met a lot of cool people. I brought some people back to my house, choosing from the best people I met in the public games, the most engaged role players. And we did about 4 D&D campaigns over 4 years. And the more and more, in between those, or when we had like a free weekend, we'd try out other systems. We've tried a lot of different systems. Some things we've tried include Powered by the Apocalypse, Dread, I love Dread, and Call of Cthulhu, and many others. So, and now that I've did my 4th D&D campaign and brought it to a close, I'm really excited to do a sci-fi campaign next.
So I'm going to try and keep sprinkling a little bit of our conversations in, but our Patreons will actually get the whole interview that I had with him. That'll get posted up on Patreon. You guys can enjoy that whole thing. Mm-hmm. So, but he was really
a pretty good pedigree of games. Like that's a laundry list of games that I love.
But when I heard that he liked Dread, I was like, oh, Sarah's gonna like this one. But so let's get into this a little bit about Stars Without Numbers. It's got a history with its creator, Kevin Crawford. There's something in it that happened with Mongoose, but it's his publishing company, which is Sign Nomine Publishing, which is just him. And he does everything. He's actually local here in Michigan. I think he started in Traverse City. and it's still in Michigan. But it was back in 2010 when Stars Without Number came out, and it was part of a very similar design as D&D with the D20 type of system.
Yeah, look, it was heavily based off of Dungeons and Dragons 3rd Edition with their open gaming license.
Yeah, which was huge at that time. It was a great thing. And then he did a Kickstarter to revise that in 2017. He then did a offset print edition again in 2020, September 2021. It got funded, and I think those are coming out. From what it looked like, there was about 21 supplements and adventures that went along with this.
Yeah.
He's got several of them on his site, but Drive-Thru RPG has everything, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for this, you can go to Drive-Thru RPG to find it. But he also has his own site for that.
One of the best things about this, though, actually, is that the rules. There's different versions of the rules. And there's the normal version and the deluxe version. Mm-hmm. The normal version's free.
Yeah,
actually, you can just it's got I think it's missing rules for like AI characters, and I think like maybe some Xenos alien sort of characters or something. There's a handful of rules, and it specifies on Drive-Thru RPG which ones it doesn't include. But like 80% of the core rules are freely available up on Drive-Thru RPG. So if you if this at all intrigues you whatsoever, go up and grab it.
And the price is very reasonable.
And it's only $20 for the deluxe edition.
Yeah, it's totally reasonable. If you're into books itself, there are books out there. I did find someone who was listing the books for $140. If you wanted hardcovers. The soft covers I think you can still get for like $30. But yeah, there are people who are hardcore still holding those. So.
Oh wow.
So let's talk a little bit about the setting. We are in the distant future, not super distant future. It's 3,200 years, 3,200, and the original empire of mankind is literally laid to waste.
So this, I love the backstory for this. Actually, it's so right around 2100 or so, mankind, and by mankind I mean a mad scientist. I forget the guy's name, but he's very much like a Doc Brown style character. Just some kook who tried to bend the laws of physics, and everybody laughed him out of the scientific community. Invents what he calls the spike drive, and he's like, "Guys, I have faster than light travel." And they're like, "Yeah, sure you do, buddy." And he gives him the finger. Takes off, and his lab turns into a spaceship and just warps
somewhere. Yeah,
and they're like, "Okay, where did he go?" He comes back 13 days later, plops down a bunch of telemetry from Alpha Centauri that could have only been gotten
from there.
Yeah, and then disappears again.
Yeah.
But along with that telemetry, downloads the plans for his
stuff
for his spike drive. And so now we have that in our possession. Basically, what it does, it spikes a hole between our dimension and the next. Basically where the laws of physics and that barrier on the speed of light doesn't exist.
Yep.
And so you're able to just cruise.
Yep.
And so mankind expands out into the stars.
Yep.
And distances we will call one spike year. It's what you can travel in 1 year on a spike drive, which is like 50 to 60 light years or something like that.
Yeah, a very reasonable distance.
So mankind starts finding out that while you're in this, what they call meta-dimensional space, children start, for some reason, we don't really know why, it's meta-dimensional extroversion syndrome, I think it was called. Basically, they start growing psionics. They become psychic. Which is actually not as cool as it sounds, because it has a 100% rate of either killing you, driving you insane, or driving you insane and then killing you.
Yeah, more like Firestarter.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah.
That kind of story.
So it takes us a while, but we finally get that all under control. And so now we have actually like psychics that aren't going to die instantly, and they can start bending the laws of physics because they can do some really cool stuff. We get a bunch of stuff called pre-tech. The pre-tech is this like stuff that really plays fast and loose with the laws of physics and does some really miraculous things. Like vaccines that will mutate along with the virus.
Right.
So it'll pick off anything, human life expectancy goes to 200 or 300 years, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Along with it, though, we also get the stuff called sci-tech,
Yes.
which is technology that requires the use of psionics to power and use.
Yeah.
The biggest and baddest of all the sci-tech devices that we invent are jump gates.
Which is badass.
Instantaneous Stargate travel, basically, from one point in the universe to the other. So now we don't need the spike drives anymore, right?
Yeah. Sure.
So mankind's purview of the universe expands to, like, dozens of spike years out.
And multiple systems, and from that, because you have these jump gates, these warp gates, and you don't need the spike drives, now you can have dedicated planets. Like, this is a mining planet. That's all it does, because you can bring supplies in really quick. Right?
The agricultural planet that's, 4 systems away can just gate stuff over to you, like, almost instantaneously.
Yeah. It comes back to that whole sections of country being used for explicit purposes that they're meant for. Terraforming whole planets to handle certain things. Aliens get contacted as well in this, but they're more like classic sci-fi aliens in the sense that they are not human.
Alien.
Yeah, they're not human in any way.
Yeah,
So-
this isn't Mass Effect. They're not like humanoids with with different faces that all speak English anyways. It's
right,
like,
right.
We meet semi-sentient Jello molds.
Yeah,
Who have no idea what our society is. None of their goals or desires or needs line up with ours.
yeah. So things are going great.
So we're like, cool, alien life. All right, whatever.
And then
the scream.
Yeah.
Basically, a storm of psychic energy rips through metadimensional space. It does 2 key things. The lesser of which is it destroys any ship that was currently in spike space.
Right.
And we're talking, it took 13 minutes to go from one end of humanoid space to the other.
Right.
Hundreds of light years, probably thousands of light years at this point,
Yeah.
covered in 13 minutes.
That's a heck of a scream.
So it destroys anything that was in spike space at the time, and 100% lethality rate to all psychics.
Yep.
Everyone who was psychic died.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's horrible.
That was 600 years before the current marker.
Right. So we're 600 years out from where we currently are. Now,
got-
obviously, that was horrible.
Yeah.
But what the problem is that all of the jump gates were psi-tech.
Yeah.
And without psychics to power them, none of those jump gates work anymore. And so every single world is now instantaneously cut off from every other world. Because remember, we have jump gates. We're not using those old-fashioned spike drives anymore, right?
Right.
Maybe out on the frontier, but they're not in common practice anymore.
No.
You don't need them. So now you have a 600-year period we call the Silence.
Mm-hmm.
And that is basically where mankind's empire becomes fractured and marooned from one another.
Yeah.
Lots of planets that, like you said, were specialized, like that mining planet that didn't need to worry about agriculture because there was an agricultural
Or
planet.
even industry. It's just
Yeah.
mining.
Yeah, exactly. What does it do now? It gets plunged into famine and chaos because the agricultural planet that was 2 systems away that was just sending it a bunch of food doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Or it might as well not exist anymore,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
And so lots of planets slipped into chaos. Lots of planets regressed technologically. Some of them never recovered. You've got some planets where people are still in, essentially medieval ages.
Yeah.
But you have other planets that fared perfectly well, that still have high technology, cyber technology, things like that, that have been able to train up their psychics. You've got space stations and whatnot. The spike drive has come back into use.
Yep.
But what it offers you is exactly what it says on the tin. Stars without number. The human empire had spread out so far that literally whatever pocket of space you come up with could perfectly well be canon. Every single one of us could come with a pocket of space and be canon, stitch them all together, and we would still not cover 10% of the possible map
Right.
of what human space had out there.
Yep. Agreed.
And so any weird little sector of space that you run your game in, completely randomly generated or otherwise, is
Fits.
great.
Yeah.
Sure, there's a planet that used to be a big mining planet. Now it's all covered in weird fungus zombies with little dome cities and a ruined starport. And there's a pirate oligarch who runs the space station in orbit around it and has his own little pirate empire.
Perfect. Yep.
Great. It exists.
Just as much as there could be a post-scarcity world where literally there's, it's like Coruscant in Star Wars, where it's layer upon layer of city that has been built up to make this gorgeous landscape of high rises and rich people living on top of the poor and destitute underneath them, barely covering the fact that they're running out of food and supplies to continue this world and scavenging the parts underneath them to do it.
Yeah.
100% valid.
Absolutely. I think Charles had some
He did.
some thoughts on the setting
I wanted
too,
not just so much the setting, but also just the system in general.
Yeah, sure.
So
that number, it's oriented, I would say it feels like fast, accessible, and just fun to explore. So you have a decent amount of hit points, the players do, that is. About half as many hit points as you would have in D&D, so it goes from about, you start with something like 5, and you end the game at about 60 to 80. But it's fast because it doesn't really incentivize combat. Only one of the game's classes is as good at fighting. The psychic magic character actually doesn't have a lot of attack spells. They're mostly focused on getting around or moving things or persuading people. So it really has a nice focus on the story rather than just the fighting. So to me, when you look at it, and especially as a game master, and you look at these amazing planet generation tools, of which there's an automated website as well, it just cries out to, like, let's go explore, let's go look at all these planets, let's see what's going on, let's negotiate, let's make friends and allies, let's go on missions. So it kind of like, it plays really fast. Usually you're just going to roll skill, you're focusing on the story, on the fiction, you're not really thinking about the rules. There's no need to optimize any characters, so and it's pretty easy to learn. So I'd say it's fast, accessible, and fun to explore.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
And it was like that fast, fun, furious that
Fast,
we get
Fun, Furious,
out of
yeah.
thing. So it's and the fact that he just went, it's fast, accessible, and fun, and
Yes.
and I think that's the key. This game is very accessible, but he even talks about that the ship creation and sector creation, and we're gonna get into that. But it is really neat. I love and that is something that is in this game. It gives a lot of immediate creativity.
One of the things that I kept hearing about this game was that it was an OSR game.
Yeah,
and I actually had to that's not a term that I'm terribly familiar with, even though I more or less live in the RPG space. But I had to go kind of look it up and just really see what the definition of it was and what people interpreted that as in the community. And that means OSR stands for Old School Renaissance, and it was a kind of a response to the 2010s-ish or so, as games kind of started to move a little bit more narrative. Things like Powered by the Apocalypse started coming into prevalence and whatnot. And there was a contingent of people who really kind of wanted to get back to the old school style of like hex crawl, dungeon crawl, 2nd and 3rd edition D&D style gaming. And I kept hearing this is an OSR game, this is an OSR game, and I didn't quite know what that meant. And now that I have a good understanding of the rules, I absolutely agree with it. And I think just talking about that rewarding exploration of having a vast system that may or may not be randomly rolled up or maybe handcrafted or a mix of both by your storyteller, and just getting out there and exploring and seeing what weird stuff the universe around you has to offer, absolutely leans into that OSR feel. And I'll come back to that as this discussion evolves.
No, there's definitely, Charles had some comments on OSR specifically, but I'm going to put it later because I kind of want to unpack the mechanics a little bit. There's again, it's very D&D like. It feels like you said it, third edition, just relaxed.
Yeah, if it's D&D 3rd edition, if everybody just chilled out.
I mean, it's not full Quaaludes, don't get me wrong. There's still some chunky pieces in it, but
No. But it's definitely like put some nice music on and just get the warm blanket, put the cat next to you, and just relax.
Yeah, I think the one thing that it leans toward is the skills. Like, that is a hard lean in this.
Yes.
Almost that it is everything. That it's just a skill check, realistically.
There's a whole class in the game built around it.
Yeah.
I mean, just being a skill jockey, essentially.
Yeah, so if you're familiar with D&D 3rd edition, or really D&D in kind of general.
Yeah. And I think probably if you're listening to the show, most of you are.
Yeah. I mean, most people are getting into that. This is kind of a good way. I almost see this fitting between D&D and Dungeon World. As far as, is that, like, how flexible is this mechanic system going for?
Yeah,
but
I agree.
In the fantasy genre like this, it kind of sits really close to Dungeon World.
It does. There was definitely some Savage Worlds that was bleeding through for me, especially in the skills list.
Yeah. So it is a class-based and leveled-based system.
Right, but chill.
Very chill.
So not class-based in that you've got like 36 classes, and they all have these 20-level scaling things that you're going to become a... No, the power curve's really flat in this game.
Yeah.
Okay? And your classes are like Warrior, Expert, Psychic, and Adventurer, which is essentially multi-classed.
Yeah.
It's your grab bag general class.
You only have 3 savings. You have... physical, mental, and evasive.
And evasive saving throws. And then your core attributes are all the same as Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep.
But like all of your numbers have been flattened.
Yeah.
So, for instance, skills range from 0 to 5.
Yep.
And 5 is like godlike.
Yep.
0 is actually a pretty typical thing to have in a skill. You have the skill, you just don't get any bonuses out of it. But you don't get penalized for not having it. You've got familiarity with it.
Sure.
You've done it.
Right.
Your attribute modifiers, something that all of us who play Dungeons and Dragons know. They've been around since 3rd edition, where you go -4 to +4 depending on your scale between 3 to 18. Right.
Still the same.
But your modifiers are flattened down so that only a 3 provides a -2 penalty to you.
Right.
Anything between 4 and 7 is just a -1.
But an 18 only gives you a +2.
Exactly.
It's very tight.
And anything 14 to 17 gives you a +1.
Right.
And anything else in the middle, there's like a big chunk, 8 to 13 in the middle, that just doesn't have a bonus to it.
No, it's just you.
It's just you.
Yep.
And the main reason a lot of this was done was so that you could focus a lot more on role-playing your character than having to worry about min-maxing a character and playing suboptimally and all that jazz. They basically wanted the numbers to get out of your way so that you could play and explore and have fun rather than worry about, oh, well, I've only got a 7 in strength, so that's crippled.
No.
Okay, it's more of a role-playing choice now.
Yeah.
Sometimes you almost kind of want to take the low scores to see what happens because there's not really a huge penalty to it.
Exactly. And I mean, your skill checks are 2d6, your combat is d20, and your initiative is d8.
Yep.
So I
your
mean,
dice are even lower.
Your dice are very low, but that 2d6 makes skills more effective, period. End of story, because you're rolling 2 dice, getting more options. Combat, being a d20, now becomes the point of contention.
Yeah.
Because you've only got one chance.
Saving throws are d20 as well.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
And saving throws is based on a TN of 15.
Yeah, starts at 15. You subtract your character's level and the best of your applicable stat, and that's what I really liked about them. Was kind of along with the whole we don't want to penalize you, for having for taking a role playing choice of having a low strength or a low dexterity or something like that. Is you get to take the best of certain stats in certain instances. So, like your physical saving throw is modified by the best stat of your strength or your constitution. So you can be weak but physically resilient and still have a good strength, physical saving throw. Your evasive is either dex or int. So yeah, sure, you might be a klutz, but if you're smart and you can think on your feet, you're going to have a good evasive saving throw. And basically they just subtract from that 15, and that's your target. So if I'm a level 2 character with a 14 intelligence,
Yeah.
then I've got a -3 to my 15 saving throw. I need to roll 12 or better.
Yep. Simple as that.
Boom, done. Easy. Very easy. Skill checks, like we said, are 2d6, modified by your applicable skill, modified by your applicable attribute. And because the numbers are so low, also so are your target numbers. So you roll 2d6, you modify it by your roll, but like 6 is your routine task.
Yeah.
8 is, okay, things are starting to get a little spicy, up all the way up to 14, which is like Herculean legendary task.
Right. I mean, still possible, but...
Still possible.
Yeah.
With enough modifiers and a high enough level character,
But with rolling
absolutely.
2d6, your lowest is going to be a 2.
It's going to be a 2.
Yeah, because you're not taking hard negatives. You're going to be possible at it, and way more possible than rolling just a d20.
Yeah.
That's the beauty that I really like about that. I think that the saving throw being just a DC 15 as a start point makes it really easy to do the math one way or another. It's very quick to do everything. I think psionic stepping in then is like magic is in 7th Sea. It's only to a specific class. It is very narrowed down.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of 7th Sea. Especially because when you... There's 2 ways of accessing psionics.
Right.
Okay, and that is either take the psionic class or the psychic class.
Psychic class.
Or be an adventurer
And be partial.
and be part psionic. And basically, when you take the adventurer, you get to be either... You choose 2 of part warrior, part expert, part psionic.
Right.
And so basically you're multi-classing between 2, and you get watered-down versions of both classes.
But you have access.
But you have access to it. But if you take partial psionic, you only get access to 1 power set. Whereas if you full psionic, you have access to everything.
Right.
And that's very much like your full-blooded, half-blooded in 7th Sea.
Very much so.
And also fans of like the Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn, you're a misting or a Mistborn.
Yeah, okay. I can see that.
Is essentially what it comes down to, yeah.
And then you've got, with access to that, you have the way that it works. Now, it's not like D&D in that they're slots. It uses a point-based system that you spend to cast.
You allocate, and that's what I really like, is when you're done allocating, you get it back.
Right. But you've got to... It's a spend/allocation.
It's committing is what they call it.
That's what it is. Committing. That's the word I was looking for.
Effort points.
And it's called effort, which I think is great.
Yeah.
Because that makes total sense. You're making an effort.
Yeah, exactly.
But you can also torch.
Torching is neat, and I love the name for it.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself in a situation where you are out of effort and you need more, right meow, and you don't mind taking some permanent damage to your character,
Yeah.
you can do what's called torching, and that's basically reaching beyond your trained limits. The only reason you aren't currently burning yourself out right now is because you've been trained how to rein yourself in and only reach within certain limits that aren't dangerous. Torching is saying, I'm going to reach further.
Yep.
I'm going beyond what they trained me to.
Yep.
You just gain 1 extra point of effort per round that you do this as a free action, instant action.
Action.
And you get extra effort points. Cool. Congratulations. You can spend those as you want.
But it hurts your stats.
Literally permanent damage to your stats.
Yeah.
Wisdom or con are most likely, but it could damage other stats. Very rarely will you avoid that damage. So it's a 1 in 6 chance of avoiding the damage. Everything else results in literally permanent stat damage.
Which I think is honest, because it makes that a very dangerous skill set.
Oh, absolutely.
To push and do those types of things.
But one of the things, like in this is again where I'm going to kind of bring it back to this being an OSR game, is that one of the big things that you find in the rules and how things play out is this kind of like calloused detachment that the rules have towards your characters.
Yeah.
And I'll get into that a little bit later when we're talking about kind of the feel of the game and such like that.
Yeah.
But the game in several places says, like, it's not going to hold your hand. It's not going to assume success.
Yeah.
This isn't a game system where you fail forward. No, you screw up.
Yeah.
And it costs you.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that happens. And sometimes that's where the drama comes from, you know?
Yeah.
You just got to try again. It's not going to assume success in any way. Encounters aren't going to be balanced.
Yeah.
And so, because it's that style game, it's very easy to imagine finding yourself in a situation where you need to leverage permanent stat damage against survival.
Right.
Like, I can hold this door if I had one extra effort point.
I guess I'm going to try for one.
I guess I'm going to torch.
Yep.
You know, not something I'm doing lightly, but if the other option on the other end of that is death,
yeah,
I'll sacrifice a point of wisdom for it.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I had actually asked Charles about this. A lot of this we discussed with the thing, but he had an interesting take on the skills, the feeling versus D&D, and some strangeness that he had found there, and I think it kind of fits here.
The more I played D&D, the more I was frustrated with the strangeness of the rules. There's a couple examples. For example, if you're playing D&D that somebody casts Windwalk, the players can go 300 feet per second, so it makes it really difficult to GM because you have to try to constantly think, okay, what is the next thing? What is the next thing? They're going so fast. Or, for example, in D&D, a thief can be an expert in Arcana, but a wizard isn't, and that doesn't really make sense because the wizard should be better, but the thief isn't. Another example, in D&D, you can't really make a barbarian who's really good at, doing tricks like a feint attack or a trip attack. You have to put all these feet points into it, which you can't really do that. So the D&D has these sort of counterintuitive restrictions to it. But Stars and Numbers is a lot simpler. You can generally just do things. The fighter is almost always going to be the best at fighting. The psychic can cast spells, pretty straightforward. Each of those costs spell points, which I found to be a lot more intuitive and simpler than the so-called Vancian spell slots. Since SCBN isn't perfect, I did find that the rule for special attacks like grappling or disarming enemies wasn't totally intuitive. So I generally house ruled that to just use instead the rule from Dungeon Crawl Classics, which is if you hit your attack, you can just do any sort of a special attack. Very simple, very easy to use, and straightforward. So, yes, Stars and Number does not have a lot of complex modifiers. The most complex thing you would do is just you roll 2d6, add a statistic and a skill, that's it. Very simple.
So, I mean, and even that, his change for handling the one complex thing that felt like it was off, fits within the system.
It really does.
It's just a scale back, you hit him, go ahead, what do you want to do?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with everything he said, especially his critiques of D&D or especially earlier iterations of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean it feels like this is why I think a lot of the time when I was reading over it, it felt like Savage Worlds to me because since the numbers were so low and the rules to adjudicate things were so streamlined that it felt like add a +1 to that.
Yeah,
was a big deal, So you're not looking at huge modifiers and giant numbers and stuff like that. It's just like, you got a favorable circumstance here. You got the drop on the guy. I don't know, add 1 to your roll. Cool.
Yeah,
and it's not that huge of a deal just to be able to you push him back 5 feet. Cool.
Yeah, stepping away from the mechanics, there's a huge section of the book that's devoted toward world building and adventure building. And I find it fascinating. It is larger than any section I've seen in other books that discusses not just how to build worlds, but gives you very, very qualifying tool sets to help you with that.
It's like 2/3 of the book.
Yeah.
And I only had the time to skim it.
It's
really
beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. So within the sector creation, it walks you through in not just steps, but also in very plain terms, hey, we're going to start with a universe, right? So I want you to just lay out a grid map, and the first thing we're going to do, we're just going to put some stars down. So, roll some dice. That'll tell you the stars. That'll tell you, based upon this, will help you put them in sectors. You don't even have to think. There they are. Now we're going to go to one of those stars, and we're going to put planets in.
You mean physically roll the dice, and where they land on the paper,
Correct.
put a dot.
Correct.
Yes.
So then after that, you're like, okay, we got that. Now let's put 2 planets there. So you can pick or you can roll, but there's a whole listing of the types of planets. What is this, a mining colony? Is this AI? Are these hostile aliens? And it's all listed. There's a chart for it.
I'm seeing a little bit of Bob Ross going on here.
Oh, so much.
Let's put a little planet here. Let's give him a friend.
But beyond that,
no, it's a binary star.
Like if this is a mining planet, there's also 4 details that is scripted for each one of the mining planets to talk about the enemies, the friends, the type of situations that are there, and what types of locations, what kind of exploration you might find there. Yeah. And they're just descriptive terms to help spur your mind about what you might find at those locations.
Yeah, absolutely. There was Charles made mention of a website that does all this for you. Actually,
there's 2 technically.
There's 2 of them. One of the main one I saw was Sectors Without Number.
Yes,
and that's just sectorswithoutnumber.com.
Yeah.
And you can basically it has all of these rules programmed into it, and you basically just go, give me a sector, and it goes, okay, wham, and spits out a whole hex map of you following all these rules, and you can drill down to like this system over here has these 3 planets. They're like this. They've got this going on them.
Does it include the factions?
I think so. Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Like it puts all the tags on them.
That is super fantastic because faction creation's the whole next thing.
Before we even got like to talking to Charles, like earlier this afternoon, Sean was doing some digging, and he was like, "Hey, check this out," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm putting that in the sheet."
Yep. So, and then beyond that, so now you've got your planets and everything. People can explore them.
Yeah.
Then you've got this faction creation, which kind of is its own mini game for the GM in its own way.
I didn't get too much into that one.
So effectively, the way that it works is you build up these factions, but then they have needs, and you can play with those needs with your table. So now you don't necessarily have to think about like, oh, what does this evil leader, what does this mega corporation needs?
Food.
It's right there.
They need food.
It's listed.
They're starving.
Yeah.
They need food.
Yeah. And now once they get that, what's the next thing? Oh, is this do something to this other faction? How do they level it out? And like all of that's in there. But what I love about all of this section and even like the tables for creating NPCs and monsters and stuff to make it on the fly that easy for you is that also embedded in all of this is how to make an adventure at its basic levels, the things that we teach in this. How to make an adventure, what it means to have hooks, what is the basic components that you need, how to not build too much and let your players find things, and then once they're there, here's the challenge.
Yeah.
Here are the NPCs discussing that challenge. And just to sit back and have a broader view. And I thought, this isn't common in books. You have to go someplace to read. You have to read from, How to Be a Great GM or, the way Seth discusses stuff and some of the other writers to go find their books on how to be a good GM. And this book is teaching you how to play its game mechanically and through role play
and narratively. Yep.
And I love that. I absolutely love that.
Absolutely.
That made me more excited than anything else to be able to read those.
And for me, like I dislike sandbox games in general, simply because I find them first off I find them exhausting to run because I have to write all this stuff, and I find them exhausting to run from the standpoint of you can go anywhere and do anything. Well, that's great. Now I have to write everything and everywhere,
Well, it also doesn't feel like a story. It feels like I'm waiting for the story as much as the players are.
Right, but like it felt like this is the one instance where I've found where I was like excited to get into a sandbox, because it put all the tools in my hand to quickly and easily make interesting and story-laden things to put in my sandbox that immediately beg the question of, ooh, what's that? Why is that?
So it's here I got another one. We're going back to the cooking reference, right? Your friends are going to come over for dinner. Hey, what are we having for dinner? And you're like, shit.
Whatever you want.
And then now everybody's guessing and it's whatever. The difference is that now you have a fridge that gets stocked by a gourmet chef once a week. So when your friends ask, what do you want for dinner? You open the fridge and go, oh my God, look at all the crap I've got to play with.
You may not know what's going to be in there until you
Right.
open it up, but it's all good.
And now you're excited to
Yeah.
make something. And
It's
that's
all
the
very
difference.
complex flavors, and
I love that, and that now you can add your own spices that
Yeah.
you have. But you've got this whole meat and potatoes waiting for you that's given
sets
every
the
time.
table nicely for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So you wanted to talk about old school Renaissance, and kind of the character generation is a good way to step into that, I think.
Yeah, the character creation I think was first off, like, the character creation is very front loaded in the game.
Yes.
In the book, it's like,
Get it
hi,
out of the
this
way.
is Stars Without Number, page 2, character creation. I mean, it may even be that quick. It may even be like page 3 character creation starts on, something like that. But it's super front loaded in the book. But it does take a brief moment to talk about how this is an OSR game, and so it's very it encourages you a lot to roll your stats,
Like old school.
randomly roll your skills, and look at what you've got between stats and skills and stuff like that, and then figure out what your character class is going to be.
And they still have the standard array, which is fine.
Yeah. They've got options where you can choose things if you want to handpick your character. But
Sure.
There's kind of a request, an urge at the beginning of the character creation to just, maybe try rolling.
Yeah.
Like they understand that it's become very in vogue to handcraft your character and make this like optimal, streamlined machine that does the thing that you want them to do. But they're like, maybe just kind of in the spirit of this game, since it is kind of an exploration, a sandbox, a very open world where anything can happen, maybe just roll your stats and see what you get.
Yeah.
And maybe just play with them. And the stats aren't so punishing that if you do roll a bad batch of stats that your character's going to be useless.
Sure.
You may not be good at everything, but nobody is.
Right.
But maybe just give it a shot.
Yeah, and I honestly would lean into it for this system specifically.
Yeah, I would. For this game, I would be willing to. I'm hardcore against rolling stats, but this has almost got me convinced.
So stats, you choose a background which gives you a skill, free skill at 0.
Well, first off, it's 3d6 to roll your stats.
Right.
If you
Or
roll your
array.
if you roll them though and don't go array, you get to replace 1 with a 14,
Which is great.
which is great.
Yeah.
You get a free good stat.
Yeah.
It's not great. It's good.
No, it's good.
Choose a background.
Yep, background.
That gives you a free skill that starts at 0. And the backgrounds are very much like Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. A lot of a soldier, or a barbarian from a backwater planet, or a pilot, or a whatever.
Yep.
You either roll or pick your skills that are related to your background. So your background will have a list. You'll get a free skill right off the bat.
Yep.
But then there's kind of a list of like growth and learning, I believe they are.
Okay.
You can either choose stuff off of the learning, or you can roll anywhere but 3 times between the growth and learning charts. And even up on the growth charts, there's stat increases. So you may not get a skill, but you might get a +2 to your dexterity. There's also a set of what they call quick skills, which are basically 3 skills that are essentially iconic to that background. So would be, your most typical skills. So if you're looking for just quick character creation,
Yeah.
you just grab those 3 skills.
Yep.
Boom.
Yep.
Or if you're uncertain, which one?
Sure. You then have classes.
Yep.
So you've got your...
It's
in
at
there,
this point you pick your class.
Right, which is just warrior, expert, psychic, or adventurer. Warrior is combat focused. They've got the extra HP. They've got a higher attack bonus. They can negate hits or guarantee hits. So they're very fighty. That's what they do.
Yeah, but that's it. But that's it. That's the whole thing of being a warrior. You don't get extra weapon proficiencies and weird feats and power attacks. And it's just, no, you get to either guarantee and or negate a hit.
Yeah, and then you have an expert who is a skill expert. Now, they're not a jack of all trades. I mean, they could be, but they might be a pilot expert, or they might be a scientific expert, or an exploration expert. And so the whole idea is that you're jacking yourself into skills. You're pushing that edge of things. You get your non-combat focus. You get to re-roll failed skill checks. You gain bonus points at level up. So the whole idea is that you are that educated, intelligent, or witty person
Yes.
who has that skill base.
You're good at things that aren't fighting, as opposed to the warrior who's good at things that are fighting.
Yep.
And again, that's it. Your psychic class is very simple. You get access to psychic abilities.
Wizard,
You don't get any of the bonus skill points. You get any of the bonus HP. You don't get any. Nope. Your bonus is, congratulations, you're psychic.
You might be able to teleport.
And honestly, that's enough. You might be able to teleport.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And then you have adventurer, which is not a class.
Yeah, it's the not a class.
It's the I want to do more than one thing class. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But basically what it comes down to, do you want to do a little warrior? Do you want to do a little psychic? It's the
I'm at the Pizza Hut. I'm at the Taco Bell. I'm at the combination Pizza Hut and Taco Bell.
Well, it's the warrior, expert, and psychic. Pick two.
Yes. Yes.
And that's the rule, is that you don't get the third, but you could have a bit of the others, and that's kind of cool.
It's like dating. Hot, sane, single.
Pick two. Yeah.
Yep.
And then you have foci, which are, I guess, like edges and feats. They're tricks. I mean, there's all kinds of words for those things.
Yeah, but they're your kind of like little special abilities that you only get a handful of, that are neat tricks your character can do.
Yep.
The cool thing about these is that they have different levels to them.
Okay.
And so like the expert starts out with a free non-combat focus, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then, during character creation, you get to choose a focus,
Yeah.
which can be the same one you chose as an expert, so you could start your expert with a level 2 focus.
Sure.
And it's the same thing for the warrior. You get a combat-based focus,
You could take a level 2
and you
combat.
can stack that with your free one at the beginning here.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've got. It seems like you're very generic up until this point. Your foci is your ability to kind of break out of that a little bit and have a neat thing that's yours.
Yeah, like you could take it either way, where you become a master of what you're doing and be hard focused, or a second career, or like a strong hobby, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely. You get a free skill.
I love that. I love that they just throw
take
a free skill.
Any
Yeah.
skill.
Yeah.
At level 0.
Yeah.
Your character has outside interests. Mm-hmm. You're not just your career.
Yep. And then your equipment package, which is pretty standard.
Bundled for your convenience.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not? And then you figure out your drive stuff. Your HP, your
derived,
saving throws.
yeah. It's HP, your saving throws, your effort points.
Yes.
I think that's about it.
I think that's it. I mean, it's pretty simple.
It's really
We're probably
straightforward,
overthinking it.
Yeah. Yeah, dead honest. So that's it. That's all of it. Like, you basically roll stats, pick a couple things, and you're done.
Yeah. And so when we talk about the gameplay of this, we're talking about the fact that it is one of the quotes that I love is that there is no narrative currency a player can spend to avert disaster.
Now, see, when we were talking about this earlier, you said, now that's magic. I said, no. That's fate points. That's bennies.
Yeah.
That's drama tokens. There's no narrative currency.
Correct.
You can't say, I'm going to spend this thing and take a mulligan.
My brain saw native, not narrative, originally,
yes.
which I guess applies in a way, but I think, yes, the narrative tokens are gone. They just don't exist.
They just don't exist.
Yeah.
So it's very, this is kind of where the core of that whole like OSR gameplay comes in, is it's the dice at the table, and that's it. That's what you get, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
If your character dies, like, okay, I'm sorry, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, that's a little almost out of scope for you and I. We've both become very accustomed to a very heroic, very narrative, very fail forward,
Yes.
Succeed with consequence sort of gameplay that focuses very heavily on the continuation of character stories rather than the consequence of action or inaction.
And that's where I think this, and if I'm going to butt two worlds and mirror them, this feels a lot like Aeon Society Adventure without that dramatic editing. In that sense, in the narrative sense, that it's the harsh reality of what that could have turned into.
Yeah.
Because there's some parallels there with the psychic power and the alteration of people and the destruction therein that comes with it.
You take the pulp out of pulp, and this is what you get. Yeah.
I mean, that's the truth. Wait a second. Is this like the non-pulp orange juice?
Yeah. Yes, it is. But that's the thing. Is like the PCs are positioned as protagonists, but the rules don't care if they live or die. And I think that's like the key thing here is getting back to that OSR sort of dungeon crawling, where it's almost like the players themselves are being tested almost as much, if not more, than their characters are. Like the characters are just kind of extensions of them. And I'm sure you've got story and narrative that goes on. Like I'm not saying there isn't role play, but you're not really elevated that much over regular people.
Yeah, you're not invincible. In no way are you invincible. Your hit points are too low. Like, literally, even at a decent level, a good couple laser shots from somebody and you're going down. Like, they're very straightforward about that. Like, hit points are not that high. A decent beast will wreck your face.
Absolutely.
Very quickly. So you're making other decisions to try and stop things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in that sense, it takes it from every problem looks like a nail, especially when, you've got one warrior in the class, really. He's the only one that everything looks like a nail to. And even he knows when to run.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say everything looks like a nail. I would just say he's the most efficient hammer-shaped thing you've got in your toolbox.
Right.
Like, nothing in here screams, I'm gonna charge the Xeno monster
right.
that's eating our spaceship.
No, you might hold your ground against it to make sure everyone else can get back to the ship.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're wrecked.
Yeah, everybody's squishy. Nobody is a god amongst men here.
I mean, and it does talk about the difference between heroic and not. And if you do want to play heroic, that's up to the storyteller to try and evoke that.
Yeah, there's some optional rules, and they're like way back, like literally the last 20 pages of the book sort of thing. They're like, yeah, you could play heroic if you want. Here's some optional rules.
Yeah.
But understands it fundamentally shifts the power balance in the game if you do. Mm-hmm. And here's some notes on how to deal with that.
Yeah, which is beautiful. Again,
yeah.
I mean, some of those notes are actually probably pretty great notes for other games.
Sure.
I highly recommend. I will say, reading the adventure section of this book on how to craft an adventure and some of the DM stuff gives some fantastic insight, not only on the creator, but their experience with handling role-playing games in general. And that storytelling, those storytelling aspects. I've got to hand it to Kevin for that. It's really well done.
Yeah, excellent.
What's interesting is that I was talking with, when I brought this up with Charles, and I kind of wanted to talk about the power curve. He kind of had some feelings about that. I want to squeeze that in right here. And
sure.
See if we can get
I'd
that.
love to hear.
SAR games tend to have levels like modern D&D, and they tend to give you more hit points per level. So once you get past a certain level, it can get really hard to kill you because you have so many hit points. It doesn't matter what people throw at you. You just kind of shrug and say, I get hit points.
Bullets.
But it's deadly at the beginning, in the early levels, but then you get pretty strong towards the end. In terms of the overall power level, I would call it about half a power level of a typical D&D. Because, by the time you get to the high level, the fighters are great. But if you're facing down, let's say, a squad of 7 enemy demonic space marines, they can probably still kill you unless you make a good preparation or ambush or something. And the other comment I'd like to make that, in the sense that it is more deadly and people do have less hit points than the basic D&D, that actually translates into less violence, which I'm not sure if it's expected or not, but I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, I love the tactical combat parts of these games, but I find that I really love the story even more. So if the prospect of just fighting somebody is probably going to kill you, then that actually encourages people to explore more. Maybe there's a way around. Maybe there's a teleporter. Maybe we can negotiate. Maybe we can trade. It inspires people to think of more creative solutions to problems. So if you're playing as a scientist investigating some strange readings on a dark planet and some horrifying monster appears, are you going to immediately reach for your rifle? Well, maybe that's not the best solution. Maybe in this game, because you know that's probably not going to work out great, you might try to use your translator device. You might try to use a hologram projector or zoology skills, or try to back away slowly. Try to handle the situation in a whole diverse variety of different ways. So in OSR games, less hit points can often mean that violence is sort of an option, but you're encouraged to consider other options as well, especially with Stars Without Numbers focus on skill point building.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
That whole thought of, like, removing combat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I literally had a discussion with Vicky about this, that combat creates a stall to the narrative every time. I don't care what kind of an adventure it is. The combat itself does not continue the narrative. It only creates conflict. Maybe at the end of that combat, it might do something for the narrative, but it still creates conflict. It doesn't really create resolution.
Yeah.
It delays the resolution of anything that you're working on. And in the case of D&D, we've seen this time and time again. Physically running combat in a tactical game delays the narrative by hours.
By hours, yeah, absolutely.
Without a doubt. So anytime that you can narratively accelerate the process and or handle it in a different way, you're pushing the narrative. You're adding to the narrative.
Yeah.
And adding to the drama of the situation versus just stalling everything dead and having maybe one or two players involved in something while everyone else is just waiting around.
Well, aside from the fact that it also rewards that style of gameplay and therefore incentivizes, like, I'm a big proponent of the idea that games teach you how to play them.
Very much so.
And so if you've got only one warrior class and everybody else is non-combatant, even your psychics are more utility than they are combat, you have to make non-combat stuff a viable option, and it sounds like it really does. That fighting just doesn't work out for you, but the other side of combat doesn't work out for you has to be alternate solutions, and skill-based characters do work out for you.
Right. And that's because this game leans heavily into skills, it diversifies that you've got effectively out of the balance of the three, because really it's three classes.
Yeah.
More than half, 2/3 of them aren't combat. They're not there for combat.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that already tells you where that lean is, but it's all of those are based hard on skills, all of them. And I think that is the telling of this story. That is the explanation of it.
And even the warrior class that is there for the combat isn't so into the combat that he becomes removed from the skills.
Right.
He's just your good combat backup.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. It is the true opposite of D&D, where every class must do combat, and therefore some of them don't do it nearly as well, but they all have combat, but everybody's got the same skills.
Yeah. Everybody does the combat. It's just which flavor of hammer do you want to bang in all these nails?
Right. And now you have bland skill base as well.
Right,
so.
and you've got tropes like the big dumb fighter that always come true, because you literally can't make an intelligent fighter because you've got dump stats, because you have to min-max your strength and your con and your dex.
But at the same time, he's not just a big dumb fighter in D&D, because he's got like every single one of the athletic skills at a degree where he's now a gymnast as well.
Right.
And it's like, okay, what are we doing here? So this diversifies that, and I think it helps make the story and people less heroic and more realistic.
Yeah.
We're getting that
verisimilitude.
Thank you. Kind of we're reconnecting with it a little bit more, but still it's about story.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
I kind of want to jump through advancement so we can get to our closing costs and the questions, because I don't want to push too late for this one.
Sure.
And get stuck in the weeds that we don't need to be in.
I want to list off, just before we get into advancement, I want to list off just a couple of the the stuff that is in the the optional rules. And kind of that isn't in the system world building stuff that I found was very interesting.
Sure.
There are rules for cyberware,
which I think is great.
They said that is rare and expensive, but it is there.
Which is funny, because this game is a predecessor of a previous game that was all cyberpunk.
Yeah.
So you can see that blend where, this may be several thousand years in the future from that, but it still kind of exists.
But it's still there. There is a big section on pre-tech artifacts, which are all these
special...
basically your magic items, essentially.
Yeah.
Pre-tech is like your like, we will never get this technology back sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Rules, like we said, for heroic characters in there. If you've got the deluxe edition, there's rules for AI and non-human characters, like Xenos characters.
Yeah, and there's transfers, mental brain transfers, basically, that you can have in that, and all kinds of stuff.
Yep. There's an extensive section there, because this is a spacefaring game. It goes without saying there's going to be a huge section in here on ship creation, maintenance, operation.
Operation is similar to the way that that Traveler handled it, where everyone has a station.
Yes.
So everybody's involved in it, and I loved that. I thought that was very well done.
They talk a little more in that section, too, about how the spike drives work and stuff like that as well, so you get a little more in-depth in that. Rules, then, likewise, for the rules of meta-dimensional travel around the sector.
Yes.
Meta-dimensional. And then, again, getting into, like, not only the sector, but getting down to the nitty-gritty of creating planets with their atmospheres, their gravity, the geography, the factions that are on them, complicating factors. I saw one of the things, like there was a D100 thing of like, what's the weird thing that's on this planet, and like double aught was zombies.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
It's on there.
Yep. I think one of the other ones kind of reminded me of like ancient alien pyramids.
Yes.
And it was like, again, it's just those fun things that you can just throw in.
Who knows why it's there? You can come up with any great story as to why, like 700 years ago, that was a thing. So all right, advancement was cool, actually.
Yeah, it's for this. It makes just sense. It clicks very clean.
It's super clean and super light. And like, you know me, I hate class-based, level-based games. But I can forgive this one.
But this works.
I can absolutely forgive this one. So your XP curve is very, very low. You're going to be earning XP by like the single point, not the hundreds or thousands like you will in D&D. It takes like 3 XP to make it to level 2, 6 XP to make it to level 3.
Nope.
So that's the scale we're talking about here.
Yeah.
As far as how you earn XP, again, this is another place where that sort of OSR, that truly sandbox experience comes into play, because it's like, we're not going to tell you what qualifies as earning XP. That's up to your storyteller.
Yeah.
What style of game are they running? What's the goals for your characters? What's going on in your sector?
Right. Are you achieving a point of reference within the story? Like, we were able to unite the clans. Excellent. Everybody gets an XP.
Cool, that's some XP. Is this a story I'm telling about recovering lost artifacts from an ancient civilization? You get 1 XP for every artifact you bring back.
Right.
Yeah.
Or here's a job list. Like, literally, you guys are a bunch of truckers.
Yep, this job is worth 2, this job is worth 3, this job is easy, it's only worth 1.
Yeah, I mean, you might also get some other stuff with it.
Yeah.
But, like, literally lay it out. Let the players know where their points are.
But it does not tell you.
Nope.
It outright says, like, it could be anything, it's up to your storyteller. They'll let you know what earns XP.
Yeah.
When you go up a level, very simple. Additional HP.
Yep. Straight up.
And I really liked how that got rolled.
Yeah.
You take a D6 for every level your character has, add your con modifier to each die. So if your con modifier is +1, you're rolling 3d6, it's 3d6 plus 3. And then you roll that. And if it is higher than your current hit point total,
that's
congrats.
your new total.
That's your new total. If it's not, you get +1 to your old total. So you'll always gain something.
Right.
But this isn't a system where you're guaranteed to go up by like 5 or 6 hit points every single time you level.
Yep.
You might get a real crap roll and just get nothing out of it.
Yeah. And now, granted, if you're a warrior or a partial warrior, it goes up a little higher.
Goes up a little bit more, yeah.
But
you get a little bonus to it. But
Yep.
but ultimately, yeah, we're not talking about making bullet sponges here like we do in
no. And if you roll really well, you may never get an upgrade for a while.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
You've got your improve your attack bonus, so it's half of your character level rounded down.
Yep.
Which is
warriors
great.
get their full character level. Partial warriors just added little bonuses here
Plus
along
1,
the way.
yeah. And then saving throws drop by 1 every level, which is pretty cool. I think that makes a lot of sense.
You get 3 skill points. And the cool thing with skill points, you can bank them,
which I think is fantastic.
and you need to actually at higher levels because it can get like when you start getting your skills up into like level 4 and level 5 and stuff, that it starts taking a lot of skill points to do that.
Yeah.
So you actually have to bank them to get those higher levels. If you are an expert, you get extra skill points.
Which makes sense.
If you're a psychic, you must spend at least 1 skill point on your psychic stuff.
That's fantastic.
You can spend it on either learning a new category or getting another, what do they call them? A
Technique?
Technique.
Yeah.
From within, basically a power from within the subsets.
Yep. You can boost attributes.
Boost attributes, yeah.
And increase existing skills. And new foci. That was the other one that was.
Yep,
I was
level
trying to
2,
remember.
5, 7, and 10, you get a focus point, basically, that you can spend along the way.
Yeah, so again, relatively simple. Much like 7C does, you could literally write this on the edge of the character sheet.
Yeah.
All of this info. It's simple.
Yep, little 6-point text and footnote at the bottom.
And you've got your entire leveling up. I mean, eat your heart out to pretty much any number of other systems where you have to return to a book to go searching for it or go online, to pull up the information that you need to try and get it. And I like that. I like that blend of where that pushes.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to real quick diverge just slowly before we go into our closing thoughts here.
Sure.
Hulu actually asked a really good question in the live chat here. He asks, do you think it would be more heroic since there is actual danger? Can you truly be heroic if you can one-shot a beholder? Like, with the lower power curve, does that make your achievements greater in contrast? Because you don't have the godlike power of a full-blown D&D character.
100% I agree with the statement that you are more heroic. I definitely think the table would feel like... it's that whole, like, we're level 1 and we just did something epic.
Oh, yeah.
It's that feeling every time you do something.
For me, this is the same... This is very reminiscent to the feel I get out of Dark Souls.
Okay.
And you've played a little Dark Souls with me, so you know that feeling of, like, I can't believe we just did that.
Yeah.
And because you have to earn that victory, because you do have to claw for it, and because those fights aren't handed to you.
Right.
And sometimes it's not always clear, like, what the attack patterns are and what the special abilities of the boss are and stuff like that. When you do get that victory, you feel amazing.
Yeah. I looked at this and that feeling and saw the expanse.
Yeah.
I was watching through as I was going through this. I could feel the level of the expanse. Real people in tough situations making snap decisions and barely coming out on top, and sometimes with great losses.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's what this is. It's heroism in the term. But when we talk about heroic games, we're talking about heroes that are greater than everything, almost superheroes.
Yeah.
And that's really where that term comes from in my mind frame. But yeah, this would make the players feel heroic, that they did something incredible.
Yes, absolutely.
And
you got a lot more potential for zeros to heroes here because you weren't character created with a silver spoon in your character sheet.
Exactly. So, all right, I kind of want to open up what things do well with Charles's commentary, just because he touches a lot of points, and I think that I think we can follow up with it.
Yeah, fire away.
Easily. So
Fire
I'll
away.
give him the floor to start with.
Number one, the most unique thing about it is it just has amazing Game Master tools. There's tons of cool tables and guides on how to create interesting planets with interesting social problems and conflicts, and missions and playable content. It has a bunch of expansion packs as well that also add tons and tons and tons more. There's the Other Dust expansion for post-apocalyptic worlds. There's the Sons of Gold expansion for creating a campaign about trading and building a merchant empire. There's a really cool expansion I like a lot called The Dead Names, which tells you tons of awesome tables for creating lost races and forgotten ruins. So there's just so much good advice for building your own universe and worlds and politics stuff. It's really cool. Putting that aside, it's really good, as I mentioned above, at creating like a fast, fun, very broad, very easy to jump in a sci-fi experience. You can do combat if you want. You can focus on negotiation. It's very flexible. You can do cyberpunk. It works great for cyberpunk. It works great for space opera. You can have a laser, a lightsaber, and your psychics. So you got that to do a Star Wars type thing. It's very flexible and it's very fast to play. But the best part is that when you have those excellent resources, you don't even need to use the stars and number rules. If you prefer another one, you can just take those awesome planet generators, or you can take the basic rules and tweak them however you like, and make it your own. And it really encourages you to make it your own too, which I think is a wonderful.
So Sean was talking about doing with he's going to be running that Savage Worlds game. He's like, I'm absolutely using systems without number to build.
100%. I was going to literally say, like, Sean, it'd be foolish not to do this if we got, like, jumped into something. Boom.
No. Well, welcome to yesterday afternoon. Yeah.
Excellent. I'm glad. But I mean, that's the whole thing is that it does have one of the best toolkits for handling this kind of situation. It is wonderful and simple, but so descriptive in its basis that it hands you so much. In just a nice section of the book. So for anyone, put this on your damn shelf. If you do any sci-fi or any place where you're doing exploration, just get a copy of this PDF, throw it on your shelf, and keep it there. You're gonna need it at some point.
Yep, like we said, just a reminder, it is free.
Yeah.
There's a free version of these rules on Drive-Thru RPG. There's no barrier to entry on this one.
Yeah, but on secondary, go give Kevin some money. He's worth it.
Oh, sure. If you've got the $20 to spare, go right for it. The biggest thing for me is that this is a streamlined, an expansive set of rules for making space sandboxes.
Totally.
I mean, that it is
accessible space sandboxes.
It's a machine for making that.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. And so if the words space sandbox being next to each other in a sentence together sends shivers down your spine, Stars Without Number is a must-have.
Yeah. I will say that this game's ability to go from gritty players who are dealing with a challenge to heroic PCs is literally a single mechanic switch.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful, easy, accessible thing. If you find that your players, you want to do a heroic space opera, you want to do Star Wars, right? But you don't want to crack open the Star Wars rules. You want to give some people some access, and you want people to feel like they have a position. You could easily use these rules and add one mechanic and make it a heroic story.
I don't even know if you need to add a mechanic to it, honestly.
I don't think you need to, but I think
you can.
You could.
Yeah,
you could very easily do it, especially if you wanted to have like a bit more, have it be a bit more combat-like. You know,
and that's the thing. Actually, I think I like actually is like I said, as much as it's a departure from my typical thing, like I like the OSR feel of it. I kind of like that space doesn't give a crap about your characters, and like you will need to come up with interesting solutions for interesting problems on a day, and it's just going to test your mettle against it. And every single tumble of the dice is going to tell a new story, rather than failing forward with drama dice.
Yeah, it is. It is a really great layout for, as far as a book for creation of worlds, the settings, the adventures, just all of the good information there for a storyteller is amazing. You don't need a DM's guide. This is your guide.
That is the DM's guide.
And it's all there, and it's done in such a beautiful way that the setting is simplistic because it's designed to be.
Yeah.
It's designed to hand you an idea and then say, okay, here you go. Now go play.
Absolutely.
And here's how to play. It's rare that we're taught how to be creative and given some base things. This is probably one of the best books that has done that.
And and in the idea of just go play, the rules have just enough crunch and complexity, I think, to scratch that itch for some people. But honestly, they're definitely on my side of quick and simplistic.
Way, yeah.
And so I think they strike a happy medium for a lot of people. I think.
Yeah. I agree. All
right. So where do we think Stars Without Numbers foibles are?
So I'm going to do the reverse here. I'm going to let Charles have a final word on this one, because I think he does some good points in there that we miss, and I think he'll appreciate this. It does feel, for those who are used to classes and definitions to help define their character, it does feel a little generic. That your players, you have to add the flair as the PC.
Yeah.
It puts a lot of weight on the PCs becoming part of the narrative and building their character to be a narrative character. So as a storyteller who's in a session 0 trying to help a person who doesn't have a lot of creativity at that moment in time, or maybe can't really think of a concept, it can be a struggle, because that's kind of a dependency. Now, granted, there are tables to help you, and there's some quick start things to help you, but it's really dependent on the PC to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And without a lot of like really flashy and flavorful, class abilities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That like something like Dungeons and Dragons will hand you. Keeping in mind that basically your character is just a dude.
Yeah.
You're either just a smart dude with skills, a tough dude with some fighting ability, maybe a smart dude with some psychic skills, or a jack of all trades dude that does a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
You're just a dude.
Yeah.
And so that can feel a little mundane.
It can, but I think, as much as it is a detachment or a detract from what a lot of people play, it opens a lot of doors.
Right, and I think it's like kind of like a Hulavu brought up earlier. Like if trouncing, the space Xenos, Hive Queen, as the Grand Warrior, power armored Space Marine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sure that feels good, but like trouncing it as just a dude in a ship, like wow, man.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing that I think too is a lot of Stars Without Numbers strengths also become its weaknesses in other areas, because it seems like it's a very specialized game. So it only provides that heroic experience when using those optional rules. Other than that, you're going to be just a dude.
Right.
Things like psionics, cyberware, pre-tech, sci-tech. They're all rare and expensive and relatively toned down in scope. And so they kind of become these mythical things. You may not get, like, the flaming sword of judgment, but you might get a nice laser rifle.
Yeah, that's true. It's not loot heavy. It's not reward heavy.
Yeah.
But the rewards that you do get have a heavy impact. But they're not global. It's not like, because everything isn't a hammer, it doesn't need a solution as a hammer, you don't have 10,000 variants of hammer.
Yeah.
Exactly. Having something that's, that's a pre-tech, that the whole thing that the pre-tech thing does, which is amazing, is a food replicator.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Suddenly just radically changes the game.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And not because there's like some kind of scarcity for food for you personally, but that narratively, holy God. I mean, it comes back in my mind to Firefly when Kaylee got traded something for strawberries.
Yes.
And just was having an experience with them.
Yeah.
And shares them with other people, so they're not just eating rice.
What it reminds me of actually too is like in your D&D game, my character walking around the desert people with a flask of water, infinite water.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Bottomless flask. I forgot what the name of it is, but
yeah.
Like how great is that? All it does is make water, but we're in the desert, and these people haven't seen magic in 100 years.
Yeah, exactly. So I think all of that really weighs in, but I want to let Charles have the last word here on falling short, and I think he kind of brings it around a little bit.
It falls a little short in terms of the way that the psychics work. It's very easy to use. I definitely like the spell point system better than the slot system, but the lore says psychic spells are very dangerous and they can drive you insane, and that's great. But then when you actually play the game, it's very easy. There's basically no risk at all. You don't have to roll anything. It just kind of happens. So it feels very casual. So other games, for example, Traveler or Cepheus, you will have to roll your skill for the psychic casting, and if you don't roll well, it doesn't happen or something bad can happen. That also applies to Cepheus Deluxe as well. Another thing where it slightly falls short is it says it's clearly intended to make the fighter characters the best at fighting, and this is almost fully borne out by the rules, but some characters who get like some of the teleport skills can actually be a little better at melee fighting than the fighters, so I would tweak that to fix that. Another area where I don't think it works out perfectly is the saving throws. So the Stars of Umber is basically the saving throw target is always 15, and you roll a d20, and you just add your level plus 2 or 3 based on what your stats are. And the problem with that is once you get to level 10, you have basically a 75% chance of succeeding on every saving throw, which makes it kind of hard to create some sort of difference. Like, is there like a rock falling on you, or is like the entire moon falling on you? Trying to create those different sense of challenges.
Yeah, so I felt that his point for sidekicks is true, is that burn, that doing torching yourself is a choice, and pushing the need for that becomes kind of challenging based upon the skill set that a psychic has. That's where things. Well, if
I can see it. The thing is that they go out of their way to explain that psychics really only get away with being psychic nowadays because of vast amounts of training to rein in their stuff,
right,
and not torch themselves every time they do something,
right.
And so, telling me that I need to risk torching myself every single time I use a core class feature is a little like saying, okay, but the warrior has to worry about shooting himself every time he pulls the trigger on his laser rifle.
I agree with you on that.
I'm trained on using this laser, right, and I'm trained on using my psychics.
Yeah.
So
I think where it comes into play in my mind is that they talk about the burn, they talk about the fact that the psychics are rare, but the ones that do exist are very, very potent. I think it becomes more of a narrative choice that the psychics have a weight as well.
Yeah.
You know, I put wizards and magic as a weight in my D&D game, you know, and you feel it every single time I'm playing, and you talk about it through my narrative, like, why does everybody hate freaking magic or not want it around?
Oh, yeah, Ravana's getting real sick of that.
But that's the whole thing is that it creates a weight in the game that's palpable. Yeah. And that's narrative weight that's happening, and you love messing with that narrative weight whenever you can.
Sure.
So I think that's one of the things that need to be that's trying to express through the mechanics and through the discussion in the game is that there is this narrative weight of psionics. And that's where that comes into play, is where you don't want that, but maybe that torching isn't the players. It's the other side torching or doing something that creates a higher risk level. And that's where, you know, like you show up at a planet that, you know, and go to a facility that was, you know, that's got like, you know, 5 or 6 psychers who are working on concepts for a new gate, right? They're very powerful. And you get there and 4 of them are dead and 2 more are like severely physically injured and clearly show signs of major torching. And you're like, oh, what are they doing here? Who's doing this? Like, why are you choosing to torch? You know, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like that really comes in as a narrative part of the story. So, yeah, it's definitely cool.
All right, you want to hit some questions?
Yeah, let's hit some questions.
All right, so we got two really good questions. Knox in the Box asks, I keep seeing this Codex of the Black Sun part of the game that introduces a magic element into play, but I don't know where this fits in the history at all. Some people seem to just want to disregard it. What are your thoughts about mixing magic into what is essentially a sci-fi game?
So, I don't see necessarily a problem with that. On the whole, I really don't. I feel that it's comfortable, you know, because again, it's just high fantasy. That's all we're talking about here. Is that you're taking it from a gritty sci-fi, questionably, because of the psionics. Like that kind of takes that away and pushes it more toward high fantasy. Sure, there's no reason why you couldn't do this in high fantasy and do a Star Wars adventure.
Yeah,
and have space dwarves and all kinds of stuff. So. I don't necessarily, but again, it's not forced. It's it's a direction you can take.
Yeah,
that's the beauty of
it. I agree. I mean, if you're asking my personal opinion, no, I wouldn't add it to this. I don't think it needs it. I think you've got psychics already, and I think that's close enough to magic that I wouldn't feel like adding Codex of the Black Sun to add, you know, extensive magic rules would add anything to the narrative.
No,
personally,
right.
But again, like, hey, no shade if you do. It's your game, man. It's your sector.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is what it directly opens up the door to is, do you want to play Warhammer 40K tabletop?
I mean, maybe you do.
Boom! There, now you cover all your bases.
Maybe you do. Boom,
now you have psionics and magic.
Yeah,
done.
There you go.
Problem's been solved.
Excellent.
You know, and I think that's great. Like, go run for yourself. It's fantastic that it's been added.
For me personally, yeah, I don't know that it would add anything to the equation for me. And the other thing too is that like I like my sci-fi a little little harder sci-fi, I think.
Yeah. You like Expanse.
Yeah. I think I like the harder edge of sci-fi. Not hard sci-fi.
Right.
Like I don't need Asimov levels, but
no. I don't think anybody really needs
but
that.
I would love an Expanse game.
Yeah.
And I think Magic would pull it back into science fantasy, and I'm not interested.
You know,
in that.
and I think that like stuff like The Mandalorian
Mm-hmm.
and shows like that where you're skirting the edge of that high fantasy. You know, where high fantasy is something that is dropped in at specific plot points, but it's not the key to the story,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the kind of feel where that can get really cool.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like, oh, neat, that's a, Jedi. Wonder what they do. You know, they'll kick your ass. Right. Be careful, because some of them are good and some of them are bad. We don't know, and that's the whole thing is that you can put it in at those kind of elements and have a control for it without it being a mainstay in your story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe
the point of your story is figuring out why it's there.
Yeah. Overwatch asks, most players can feel immediately at home in classic familiar fantasy settings with taverns and dungeons and such, fairly effortlessly. How do you bring a more exotic setting to life for the players? What can you do to make an alien world or the deck of a starship in the deep black of space feel like a real setting in a big part of the and a big part of the campaign?
For me, a lot of this lies in just giving good, vivid descriptions of things.
Mm-hmm.
And use your tools if you can. I'm going to harken back to your D&D game.
Mm-hmm.
Was it last weekend?
Yeah, it was just this past weekend.
You had a really excellent scene where we went to the Elven Kingdom, which is a castle built up into a giant tree.
Yes.
And you didn't have any music going in the background, and for like a hot second, I was a little disappointed. I was like, oh man, I was really hoping he was gonna have like some like sort of heroic or even like a creepy, mysterious thing going on because it's kind of a ghost town now.
Mm-hmm.
What you did have was blowing wind and creaking tree limbs,
mm-hmm.
and combined with the fact that we were in a castle that is essentially in a giant tree, and that those creaking tree limbs instantly summoned up a feeling in my mind of like how big those limbs must be, and
mm-hmm.
they're creaking, and feeling an entire castle slightly swaying in the wind.
Yep.
And how that would affect me and my senses and stuff
mm-hmm.
like that. I think, especially if you were going to try to put your players in the mindset, put them into the scene
mm-hmm.
of an alien world
mm-hmm.
or a spaceship, lean into your descriptors.
Mm-hmm.
Give a good, vivid description and lean into your tools,
Mm-hmm.
Have the boops and beeps of a radar or, something like that from, there's sci-fi soundtracks and whatnot in the back that you can get. They're just literally sound tracks.
Yeah.
For the decks of starships, or maybe wind swept across the dusty Martian landscape or something
mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
Anything you can do to draw them into that,
yeah.
while you're backing that up with your physical descriptions and whatnot, and just allow them to explore the space.
Yeah, I think for me, coming back to like the whole like classic fantasy taverns and dungeons. Like a player, when you say you're walking into a tavern, the word tavern means something to you.
Yeah.
It gives you an evocation of it. You talk about the fire, you can hear it crackling, you can see a minstrel in your mind playing the song that you're hearing. Those types of things. When you're starting to do that with space, the tropes are the same. When in Star Wars, when they walked into Mos Eisley, into the cantina, there was music playing, there's people at a bar, everybody kind of looks for a second and checks out who the new people are. That's a Western trope. That's an old mainstay trope. Those tropes don't leave. They just have a different location.
Tying things into the human experiences.
Exactly.
Like, you can identify with a crackling fire. You can identify with the bar. You can identify with the band on the far side.
Right. If you're going to a blacksmith in space or an alien world, and you literally walk into a arched building with a high ceiling that there's blue smoke rising from, and you come in the warmth of a multi-burner hearth in the very center, where jets of blue fire come up and are pierced by a multi-armed alien with a visor over him and heavy carapace on his chest that glistens and glows from it. And as he hammers away and heats things with various hands, you know he's a blacksmith.
Yeah.
There's no question what he's doing. But again, all you're doing is taking that same imagery that you would take from a fantasy story and bring it straight into a sci-fi world and pull those kinds of things in. One of the deep space things that you're talking about is like when you're in deep space, keeping the feeling that a starship feels like a home is that it's active.
Yeah.
That there are places to go within it. There's a mess hall that's noisy, just like a tavern.
People will personalize their spaces.
Correct. There's pictures. There's there's command calls that are coming over the comms openly. You hear them on the klaxons going off. Klaxons going off when flight deck is being prepped for a mission. And these people have to go. Those little things that you throw in there. Remind them that it's a living, breathing space that's tight and people are involved in it.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of brings a home to light. And there's nothing that says you can't use the same rules that like City of Mist does and Urban Shadows, where you let them help you build that home.
Sure. Absolutely.
Like, hey, here's your starship. Where's the mess hall? Where's the barracks rooms? Here, where's the flight deck? Things like that, so that they feel and see the ship. And when you talk about decks getting damaged, and ruptures and things, they know where those are. And they're like, well, how are we going to get up to the med deck? It's 2 levels above us, and there's a hull breach, 1 floor directly above us. Well, we're going to have to climb through the hangar and go up through the emergency, thing. They know that. They built the ship with you. And that's part of that, bringing a campaign to have a setting that still feels like a home that's being sieged.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's where it comes to me. That's where I see that kind of stuff happening. So, and I love that.
Yep. All right. I think we've belabored this point just far enough.
So next week, we're going to be going after gritty and violent stories.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tonal shift, but sometimes our stories get can take a violent edge and stuff like that. So we're gonna explore how to do that and do it tastefully and do it well. You can find us on Twitter at @ST_conclave, on Instagram at @ST_conclave. Listen to us live every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave, and join us up on our Discord. You can find that link up on our Twitter as well as our website, storytellerconclave.com.
We'd really like to thank Charles for taking the time out of his vacation.
Thank you, Charles,
to do this interview with us today. And again, that will be up for our Patreons. Our name members are Knox in the Box, Sam, the Arcane Asylum, Sparkle Motion, Veteran, and Hulavu. We truly appreciate all the assistance you give us, and continue to. Our pre-show music is by Arcane Anthems. You can find that at patreon.com/arcaneanthems. Our intro music is Beyond the Warriors by Geefrog. You can find that at geefrog.bandcamp.com or on Google Music. And our outro music, which you're hearing right now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Midair Machine. You can find that at freemusicarchive.org.
Big shout out as always to our families, Vicky and Sean. Thank you so much for loving and supporting us.
Thank you.
All of our friends who sat with us at our tables over the years who give these great experiences to share with you. And you, every single one of our listeners, we love you so much.
We love you guys.
Good night.